I'm Alexandra, 34. Yesterday, I walked into my mother's office after 3 years of building my own design company and heard her beg me for $75,000 to save our ancestral home from foreclosure. The same home where she hosted a lavish party for my brother's first $5,000 contract, but claimed she was too busy to attend my design exhibition that generated $58,000 in sales. I didn't scream. I didn't break down. I simply looked her in the eyes and said the words I never thought would cross my lips. Sorry, Mom. I only help family. Her face crumbled like the foundations of the empire she swore I couldn't survive without. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt undervalued by the people who should support you most. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. The Hawthorne name meant everything in our small Connecticut town. 5 generations of architects who shaped the skyline and influenced local politics. My father Thomas expanded the firm his father built, and my older brother Robert was groomed from birth to inherit the throne. Then there was me, the artistic daughter with impractical dreams of becoming a designer. Design is a hobby, Alexandra, not a career, my mother Victoria would say, her voice dripping with dismissal. Especially not for a Hawthorne. I still remember sitting at our mahogany dining table at 16, clutching my acceptance letter to the prestigious Rhode Island School of Design. My hands trembled with excitement. We're not paying for art school, my mother announced over Sunday roast. The Hawthorne money goes to practical education. My father stared at his plate, silent as always. But I got a partial scholarship, I argued, fighting back tears. Not enough. Maybe work for the family firm instead? Design our brochures or something? 2 weeks later, they paid $160,000 upfront for my brother's business school tuition. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through design school. Morning shifts at a cafe, evening retail, and weekend freelance design work. I graduated with honors and $43,000 in student loans. Now you can come work for Hawthorne, my mother said at graduation, like she was offering me salvation instead of scraps. I accepted. What choice did I have? The recession had hit, and entry-level design positions were scarce. I told myself it was temporary. For 3 years, I designed everything for Hawthorne architecture logos, brochures, web presence, office interiors. I modernized their dated aesthetic and brought in younger clients. My starting salary was $32,000 less than half the market rate for my skills. You should be grateful, my mother said when I requested a raise. We're giving you experience. Besides, this money stays in the family. Except when it came to decision-making, I wasn't family. I was staff. My brother Robert received partnership at 27. I was still the designer at 29, despite bringing in 30% of new business through my rebranding efforts. You need to understand your place, my mother said during one particularly heated argument. This is a Hawthorne business. Your job is to support your brother's vision. I started freelancing secretly on evenings and weekends. Small projects at first, logos for local businesses, wedding invitations, social media graphics. I saved every penny in a separate account my family knew nothing about. The breaking point came during a client meeting. I'd spent weeks designing a revolutionary concept for a tech startup. Modern, minimalist, perfectly aligned with their brand values. My mother took one look and pushed it aside. Too experimental. We'll go with something more traditional. The client wants the Hawthorne touch. The client frowned. Actually, I loved Alexandra's design. It's exactly what we discussed. Trust me, my mother smiled condescendingly. I've been doing this for 30 years. The Hawthorne name was built on tradition, not trends. Later that evening, she found me packing up my desk. What are you doing? Quitting. Don't be ridiculous. Where will you go? Who will hire you? You're nothing without the Hawthorne name behind you. I still remember the ice in her voice as she delivered the line that would change everything. You will never achieve anything without our name, Alexandra. Never. I placed my company keycard on the desk. Watch me. The next morning, I woke up in a cheap hotel room with exactly $16,142 in savings and a decision that terrified me. I'd spent so long being Alexandra Hawthorne that I wasn't sure who I'd be without that identity. My phone showed 27 missed calls from my mother, 13 from my father, 5 from Robert. I turned it off. Instead, I called my grandmother's sister, Aunt Maggie, the black sheep who left Connecticut 40 years ago to become an artist in New York. I need a place to stay while I figure things out, I told her, voice trembling. The spare room is yours for as long as you need it, sweetheart. 2 days later, I was in Brooklyn, sleeping on a pull-out sofa in a tiny apartment filled with half-finished paintings. Aunt Maggie was 78, with silver hair and paint-stained hands that never stopped moving. So you're finally breaking free from Victoria's clutches, she said, pouring me tea from a chipped pot. Took you long enough. She says I'll never succeed without the Hawthorne name. Maggie snorted. Victoria always confused inheritance with achievement. Tell me, what name do you want? I thought about it for days. My mother's words echoed in my head. You'll never achieve anything without our name. Maybe she was right. The Hawthorne name opened doors. It represented 5 generations of success. Who was I without it? One evening, while helping Aunt Maggie organize old photographs, I found a faded picture of my grandmother as a young woman. On the back was written, Elizabeth Parker, 1952. Parker was your grandmother's maiden name, Aunt Maggie explained, before she married into the almighty Hawthorne dynasty. Parker. It felt right somehow. The legal process took 3 months and cost $506. I became Alexandra Parker officially on a rainy Tuesday morning. Finding design work in New York was brutal. I'd removed Hawthorne architecture from my portfolio, which left conspicuous gaps in my work history. I couldn't use my family connections, couldn't even list them as references. I sent out 217 applications in my first month, received 14 responses, 3 interviews, 0 offers. My student loans entered repayment. My savings dwindled. I started working at a coffee shop near Maggie's apartment, designing menus and promotional materials for them at a discount just to add something recent to my portfolio. Each night I worked on freelance projects, building my new identity as Alexandra Parker, designer. My rates were low, embarrassingly low, but I needed the work and the reviews. 6 months into my new life, I landed my first significant client, a boutique skincare startup with a $6,000 budget for complete branding. I worked day and night on that project, pouring everything I had into proving my mother wrong. When I presented the final designs, the founder was silent for a long moment. "This is extraordinary," she finally said. "You've captured exactly what we imagined but couldn't articulate." She referred me to 2 friends with similar businesses. Word began to spread. Alexandra Parker wasn't a household name, but in certain Brooklyn circles, people started to know my work. I opened a business checking account for Parker Design on my 1-year anniversary of leaving Connecticut. My balance was just $4,231, but it was mine. Every penny earned without the Hawthorne name. That night, I received my first email from my father in months. "Your mother is too proud to reach out, but we miss you. The business isn't the same without your creativity. Please come home." I stared at the screen for an hour before replying with one sentence. "I am home." My finger hovered over the send button for a full minute before I found the courage to press it. What would you have done? Comment below if you've ever had to choose between family expectations and your own dreams. By my 2nd year in New York, Parker Design was more than just a name on a bank account. I'd secured enough regular clients to rent a tiny studio space in a converted warehouse, sharing a bathroom and kitchenette with 3 other creative startups. My office was barely 200 square feet, with secondhand furniture and a constantly leaking ceiling in one corner. But every morning when I unlocked that door, pride surged through me. This space, this business, this life, I'd built it from nothing. The skincare company that gave me my first big break had grown considerably, and they brought me along for the ride. Their products were now in 3 national retail chains, all featuring my packaging designs. The $500 per month retainer they paid me covered almost half my rent. I hired my first employee, Zoe, a design school graduate who reminded me of myself 3 years earlier. She worked part-time, 20 hours a week at $22 per hour. Sometimes I couldn't afford to pay myself, so she could get her check on time. Zoe brought technical skills I lacked, particularly in animation and 3D modeling, which allowed us to pitch for more diverse projects. Her fresh perspective and quiet determination made her invaluable, and I knew keeping her would be crucial to our growth. I still hadn't spoken directly to my mother. My father called monthly, our conversations growing increasingly strained. He never quite asked me to come back, but the invitation lingered unspoken in every pause. "Your mother doesn't understand why you needed to change your name," he said during one call. "She takes it as a personal rejection." "It was never about rejecting her," I replied. "It was about finding myself." "By erasing your heritage? By creating my own." The call ended awkwardly, as they always did. My brother sent occasional texts, surface-level updates about the weather or local sports teams, never mentioning the business, never acknowledging my absence. On particularly bad days, I questioned everything. Was I being childish? Throwing away generations of privilege over wounded pride? My one-room studio with its leaky corner wasn't exactly the empire I'd envisioned. Then I'd remember my mother's words. "You'll never achieve anything without our name." Those words became my fuel on the hardest days. During one particularly difficult month, when 3 clients delayed payments and I had to choose between paying rent and paying Zoe, I called Aunt Maggie in tears. "I'm failing," I confessed. "Maybe Mom was right." "Nonsense," she replied firmly. "You're not failing. You're learning." Victoria never allowed herself to learn through struggle, which is why she can't innovate now. "What do you mean?" Your father mentioned that Hawthorne Architecture lost the Westbrook account last month. First time in 30 years they're not using a Hawthorne design. This was the first I'd heard of any business troubles. They lost Westbrook? That's nearly 20% of their annual revenue. Apparently the client wanted a more contemporary approach. Sound familiar? It did. It was exactly what I'd been trying to introduce before I left. 3 days later, a magazine featured one of my designs for the skincare line. It wasn't a major publication, but it was legitimate industry recognition. I took a screenshot and nearly sent it to my mother. My finger hovered over the send button before I decided against it. My success wasn't about proving her wrong anymore. It was about proving myself right. After the magazine mention, I received an email from a design blog requesting an interview about my fresh perspective on branding. The skincare campaign had caught their attention. Your work shows such freedom, the interviewer said. There's no hint of traditional corporate constraint. I laughed. I had to shed some heavy expectations to find that freedom. The interview brought more attention, more clients. I hired Zoe full-time and brought on an intern. My tiny office became too small. I signed a lease on a legitimate commercial space still modest at 800 square feet, but with actual walls and a door that closed and a ceiling that didn't leak. The day we moved in, I had our logo painted on the door, Parker Design in simple, bold lettering. Zoe brought champagne. We toasted sitting on moving boxes. To Parker Design, she said. May we always be underestimated. I touched my glass to hers. And may we always prove them wrong. Are you still with me? Comment below and let me know if you've ever had to reinvent yourself completely. The journey gets even more intense from here. The third year of Parker Design brought growing pains but steady progress. We expanded to a team of 3 full-time employees. Our client roster included 1 national brand and dozens of smaller companies. Revenue hit $327,000 that year. After expenses, rent, salaries, and equipment investments, my personal income was $58,000, nearly double what I'd made at Hawthorne Architecture. We weren't huge, but we were becoming respected in our niche. I was focused entirely on building my business, thinking less and less about my family. Then I received the invitation to my father's 65th birthday celebration. It arrived by mail, heavy cream cardstock with embossed lettering. So formal, so Hawthorne. My mother had written a personal note at the bottom. Alexandra, your presence would mean the world to your father. Please consider coming home even briefly. Home. As if the past 3 years hadn't happened. As if I hadn't built a new home for myself. I called Aunt Maggie, who'd become my most trusted advisor. Should I go? I asked. Do you want to? I miss my dad, and maybe enough time has passed that Mom and I could at least be civil. Then go. Just remember who you are now. I RSVP'd yes and booked a train ticket to Connecticut. The night before leaving, I had a panic attack in my apartment, my first in years. What if they belittled my achievements? What if my mother was right all along and I'd just been lucky? What if seeing the family estate made my modest success feel insignificant? I packed and unpacked my suitcase 3 times, changing outfits that would show I was doing well without seeming like I was trying too hard. The train ride felt like traveling backwards in time. With each mile closer to my hometown, I felt myself shrinking, becoming the dutiful daughter again. No, I straightened my shoulders. I wasn't that person anymore. The taxi dropped me at the imposing gates of the Hawthorne estate. My childhood home looked exactly the same: Georgian columns, manicured lawns, gravel driveway where luxury cars were already parked for the party. But I noticed subtle differences. The paint on the trim was slightly faded, the fountain in the circular drive wasn't running, and there were fewer staff than I remembered from previous family events. My hands trembled as I rang the doorbell. Our longtime housekeeper, Irene, answered. Miss Alexandra. She embraced me warmly. Or should I say, Ms. Parker now. We've seen your work in magazines. Before I could respond, my father appeared in the hallway. He'd aged noticeably, hair completely silver now, new lines around his eyes. But he beamed when he saw me. Alexandra. He hugged me tightly. You came. Happy birthday, Dad. Let me look at you. He held me at arm's length. Success suits you. My mother appeared behind him, her face a carefully composed mask of politeness. Alexandra, welcome home. Hello, Mother. Thank you for inviting me. The awkward moment was broken by my brother rushing down the stairs. Alex, you actually came. Robert seemed genuinely pleased to see me, which was unexpected. The party was Hawthorne extravagance, but I noticed cost-cutting measures: fewer caterers than usual, house champagne instead of premium brands, artificial flower arrangements where there had once been fresh exotic blooms. Small things most guests wouldn't notice, but I did. Alexandra Parker? One of my father's friends approached. I read about your work with Ellison Skincare. Quite impressive. My mother, standing nearby, stiffened visibly. Thank you. I replied. It was an exciting project. She's doing quite well for herself, my father said proudly. Despite dropping the illustrious Hawthorne name, my mother added with a tight smile. The friend looked uncomfortable. Well, she's clearly made her own name impressive. Throughout the evening, similar scenes repeated. People congratulated me on my success. My mother found ways to mention the Hawthorne legacy. My father tried to bridge the gap between us. After dinner, he pulled me aside to his study, the room where I'd spent countless hours as a child watching him work. I noticed the desk was cluttered with papers marked past due and final notice, hastily covered with folders when I entered. I'm proud of you, Alexandra. What you've built, it's remarkable. Thank you, Dad. That means a lot. I nodded toward the partially hidden bills. Is everything okay with the business? He followed my gaze and sighed. We've had better years. The market is changing faster than we anticipated. Anything I can help with? No, just a temporary rough patch. He changed the subject. Your mother, she struggles to understand your choices. But she does follow your career. She has a folder of every magazine mention of Parker design. I blinked in surprise. She does? She's too proud to admit she was wrong. You know how she is. I did know. The Hawthorne pride was legendary. I miss you, he said simply. The house feels empty without your creativity. The morning after my father's birthday party, I woke early in my childhood bedroom. Everything remained untouched: design books on the shelves, old sketches pinned to the bulletin board, even my high school tennis trophies gathering dust. It felt like a museum to a person who no longer existed. I went downstairs to find my mother alone in the kitchen, something I'd rarely seen growing up. Victoria Hawthorne didn't cook. We'd always had staff for that. But here she was, awkwardly making coffee. The weekend housekeeper is off today, she explained, noticing my surprise. I nodded and sat at the counter, unsure what to say. 3 years of silence stretched between us. Your business seems to be doing well, she finally offered, sliding a cup toward me. It is. We're growing steadily. Parker Design. She said the name like she was tasting something unfamiliar. I still don't understand why you needed to erase your heritage. I didn't erase anything, Mom. I created something new. By rejecting everything we built for you. I took a deep breath. Parker was Grandma's maiden name. I didn't pick it randomly. Something flickered across her face, surprise perhaps. I didn't know that's why you chose it. There's a lot you don't know about me. The conversation stalled again. Through the window, I could see my father in the garden, inspecting his prized roses. He looked smaller somehow, less imposing than the patriarch I'd grown up fearing and respecting in equal measure. The business isn't doing as well as we let on last night, my mother said suddenly, her voice lower. Your father didn't want to burden you, but we're facing challenges. What kind of challenges? The market is changing. Clients want modern approaches we're not equipped to provide. Your brother tries, but... She trailed off. I waited, sensing there was more. We've lost 3 major clients this year. All went to younger firms with fresher perspectives. She looked directly at me. Firms like yours. The implied accusation hung in the air. I didn't poach any Hawthorne clients, I said firmly. No, but you showed them alternatives exist. She sighed. The Hawthorne name doesn't carry the weight it once did. There was a strange vulnerability in her admission. I'd never heard my mother acknowledge any weakness in the family business. What are you saying, Mom? Your father is considering bringing in outside partners after 5 generations of family ownership. The news hit me harder than expected. Despite everything, the idea of the Hawthorne firm belonging partially to strangers felt wrong. Have you considered just modernizing your approach? Robert has tried implementing new systems, but it's not enough. We need... She hesitated, pride visibly wrestling with necessity. We need the kind of vision you brought. I nearly dropped my coffee cup. Was Victoria Hawthorne actually admitting she needed me? You could come back, she continued, not quite meeting my eyes. As a partner, of course, equal to Robert. We could rename it Hawthorne and Hawthorne. Parker, I corrected automatically. It would be Hawthorne and Parker now. Her lips thinned. That's your condition? Keeping that name? It's not a condition, Mom. It's who I am now. After everything we gave you. What exactly did you give me? You didn't pay for my education. You underpaid me for my work. You took credit for my ideas. You told me repeatedly I'd never succeed without the family name. My voice remained steady, but my hands shook. I placed them flat on the counter to still them. And yet here I am, succeeding. She stared at me for a long moment, then turned away to rinse her cup in the sink. I see you've made your choice, she said, back still turned. I thought perhaps with some time and perspective, you'd recognize the value of family legacy. I value legacy, Mom. I'm just building my own. Have you ever had to stand your ground with family? Drop a comment below if you faced pressure to follow a path that wasn't right for you. I returned to New York with mixed emotions. Seeing my father had been healing in ways I hadn't anticipated. He'd aged significantly, and acknowledging his mortality made our estrangement feel more costly. But reconnecting with my mother had only reinforced why I'd left. The next morning, I called a team meeting at Parker Design. "We're going to expand," I announced to my surprised employees. "I'm bringing on one more designer and a project manager." "What prompted this?" Zoe asked, tucking a strand of purple hair behind her ear. As my first hire and now creative lead, she'd become my right hand in the business. I thought about my mother's reluctant admission that Hawthorne architecture was struggling because they refused to evolve. "It's time to grow beyond what we're comfortable with," I replied. Staying small was safe, but I didn't leave everything behind to play it safe. Over the next 6 months, Parker Design transformed. We moved to a slightly larger office space, still modest by Hawthorne standards, but impressive for a 3-year-old independent firm. Our team grew to 5 people. We specialized in rebranding established companies that needed fresh perspectives. I worked harder than ever, often sleeping on the office couch during intense project phases. My personal income actually decreased temporarily as I reinvested profits into the business. Aunt Maggie visited the new office, bringing a handmade quilt for the couch where I occasionally spent the night. "Victoria called me," she mentioned casually while hanging the quilt. I froze. "My mother called you? Why?" "To ask about you, of course. She'd never admit it, but she's curious about your life here." "What did you tell her?" "Only that you were working hard and building something worthwhile." Maggie smiled. "I may have mentioned that several clients have sought you out specifically for your fresh approach, exactly what she once dismissed." I should have been angry at this interference, but instead felt a strange satisfaction. My mother was paying attention, even if she couldn't bring herself to contact me directly. 9 months after my father's birthday visit, Parker Design won its first design award for our work with a regional hotel chain. The recognition brought attention from larger potential clients who previously wouldn't have considered a boutique firm. The morning after the award ceremony, I received a text from my brother. "Congratulations on the Brenner Award. Well deserved." It was the first acknowledgement from any family member about my professional achievements. I stared at my phone for several minutes before replying with a simple, "Thank you." Later that week, Robert called. "I'm in New York for a conference. Would you have time for coffee?" We met at a busy cafe near my office. Robert looked tired, his designer suit slightly rumpled, dark circles under his eyes. "You look good, Alex," he said after an awkward hug. "Success agrees with you." "Thanks. How are things at Hawthorne?" He hesitated, stirring his coffee longer than necessary. "Challenging. We've lost 2 more major clients. Dad's talking about early retirement. I'm sorry to hear that. Mom wouldn't want me telling you this, but we've had to let go 3 staff members. The Westbrook project fell through after 30 years of having their account. The family that owns the paper mill? They went with a firm from Boston, said they needed a contemporary approach." He made air quotes, bitterness evident in his voice. I felt a pang of sympathy. Robert had been groomed since birth for a role that was becoming obsolete through no fault of his own. "It's not your fault, Rob. The industry is changing. Mom blames herself, though she'd never admit it. She knows she drove you away." This revelation stunned me. She said that? Not in those words. But I overheard her telling Dad that if they'd supported your modern ideas years ago, maybe we wouldn't be in this position. I sat back, trying to process this information. Victoria Hawthorne admitting regret, even indirectly, was unprecedented. "The thing is," Robert continued, leaning forward, "we could still turn things around with the right rebranding. A complete modernization." I immediately understood where this was heading. "And you want Parker Design to do it. Who better? You know our history, our strengths. You could honor the legacy while bringing us into the present." "Does Mom know you're asking me this?" He looked down at his coffee. "Not exactly. She's still, you know how she is." I did know. Victoria Hawthorne would rather watch her family business struggle than directly admit she'd been wrong about me. "I can't help unless she asks me herself, Rob. You understand that, right?" He nodded slowly. "I was afraid you'd say that, but I get it." As we parted, he hugged me tightly. "For what it's worth, I'm really proud of what you've built, Alex. Or should I say Ms. Parker? Thanks, Rob. That means a lot." Walking back to my office, I felt lighter somehow. My brother's validation shouldn't have mattered after all this time, but it did. Maybe some family ties couldn't be completely severed, no matter how hard I'd tried. The 4th year of Parker Design brought our biggest challenge yet, a major rebranding campaign for a regional department store chain with 12 locations. The budget, $240,000 over 8 months. "Can we handle something this size?" Zoe asked during our strategy meeting. "We'd need to add at least 1 more designer." "We can and we will," I replied with more confidence than I felt. This is exactly the opportunity we've been working toward. The truth was, I'd pitched aggressively for this account, partly because the department store was one of Hawthorne Architecture's former clients. They'd designed the original flagship store back in the 1980s. I hired 2 new team members and pushed our little office space to its limits. The next 2 months were a blur of 70-hour work weeks, midnight strategy sessions, and constant travel to store locations across the region. Through it all, I battled the voice in my head that sounded suspiciously like my mother. "You're overreaching. You'll fail spectacularly. You never had the business acumen of a true Hawthorne." But we didn't fail. The first phase of the rebranding launched in 2 test locations and exceeded sales projections by 22%. The client fast-tracked the rollout to their remaining stores. Regional publications featured our work. Design students emailed asking about internships. Competing firms began citing Parker Design as an influence. In the middle of this whirlwind, I received a formal invitation to my parents' 40th anniversary celebration. My first instinct was to decline. I was too busy, too focused on proving myself with this major project. Then I realized I no longer needed to prove anything. Parker Design was thriving. I had created something valuable entirely on my own terms. I RSVP'd yes and called Aunt Maggie to tell her I was visiting Connecticut again. "Good," she said. "They're struggling more than they let on when you were there last." Victoria would never admit it, but they're considering selling the family home. Selling the estate? After 5 generations? The upkeep is becoming too much with the business declining. Robert's been trying to modernize their approach, but without your eye for design, it's been an uphill battle. I felt a twinge of something unexpected, not satisfaction at their struggles, but genuine concern. The Hawthorne estate looked different this time, smaller somehow, less intimidating. Or perhaps I was simply viewing it through new eyes. The celebration was more subdued than my father's birthday party had been. Fewer guests, less extravagance. I noticed definite signs of financial strain. The catering was from a less prestigious company, the flower arrangements less elaborate, fewer staff circulating with champagne. My mother greeted me with her usual restrained politeness, though I detected something new in her expression, a wariness, perhaps even respect. "Alexandra, thank you for coming. Congratulations on 40 years, Mom." My father embraced me warmly. "You look wonderful. I've been following your work with Central Retail. Very impressive." "Thank you, Dad." Throughout the evening, I caught my mother watching me from across the room, not with her usual judgment, but with something more complex curiosity mixed with what almost looked like regret. After dinner, she approached me on the terrace where I'd stepped out for fresh air. "Your brother tells me Parker Design is now a team of 7 people, she said, looking out at the gardens rather than at me. 8, actually, with our newest hire. "And your annual revenue?" Typical mom, straight to the financials. "We'll break $650,000 this year." She nodded slowly. "Respectable for a firm your size." Coming from Victoria Hawthorne, this was practically effusive praise. "Robert mentioned he spoke to you about potentially helping Hawthorne Architecture. So we were finally addressing it directly." I remained silent, waiting. "I want you to know that while we would welcome your professional input, I understand why you might decline." She smoothed an invisible wrinkle from her dress. "Your father and I are exploring the possibility of selling the firm." Selling? The news hit me harder than expected. After 5 generations? We don't see another option. Robert is a capable manager, but he lacks the vision needed to revitalize the business. And with your father's health concerns. Dad's health? What health concerns? She looked surprised. "He didn't tell you?" "He was diagnosed with minor heart problems last year. The doctor advised reducing stress, which in his case means stepping back from the business." My mind raced. How could no one have told me something so important? "I thought Robert would have mentioned it," she continued. "In any case, your father wants to ensure his retirement is secure, which means maximizing the firm's value before selling." I understood now why my brother had approached me. A successful rebranding could significantly increase the sale price. "And you're okay with selling the family legacy?" Something flashed in her eyes, a brief glimpse of the pain beneath her composed exterior. "I've learned that legacy takes different forms, Alexandra. Your father and I want to enjoy our remaining years together without financial stress. If that means letting go of Hawthorne Architecture, so be it." It was the most human conversation we'd ever had. "I'm sorry about Dad's health." "Yes, well, he's managing it well with medication." She turned to face me directly. "Your designs for Central Retail are exceptional. I know talent when I see it, regardless of the name attached." From Victoria Hawthorne, this was the equivalent of a standing ovation. "Thank you, Mom." As she turned to go back inside, she paused. "You've proven me wrong, Alexandra. Not many people can say they've done that." And it was as close to an apology as I was ever likely to get. What would you do if someone who never believed in you suddenly acknowledged your success? Share your thoughts in the comments. 2 weeks after my parents' anniversary party, I received a formal email from Hawthorne Architecture requesting a meeting to discuss potential collaborative opportunities. It was signed by both my father and brother, but notably not my mother. I agreed to the meeting but insisted it take place at Parker Design's offices. If we were going to discuss a professional relationship, it would be on my terms, in my territory. Before the meeting, I called Aunt Maggie. They want Parker Design to rebrand Hawthorne Architecture, I explained. What do you think? I think you need to decide if you can separate your professional judgment from your personal history, she replied. Can you take this on as Alexandra Parker, businesswoman, rather than as the daughter who was underestimated? It was the right question. Could I approach this professionally, or would old wounds dictate my decisions? The morning of the meeting, I arrived early to ensure everything was perfect. Our Manhattan office wasn't lavish, but it was stylish and distinctly contemporary open concept, with strategic glass partitions, abundant natural light, and walls showcasing our award-winning campaigns. At precisely 10 a.m., the receptionist announced their arrival. My father, brother, and to my surprise, my mother entered our conference room. Impressive space, my father said, looking around appreciatively. Thank you. I gestured for them to sit. Coffee? We exchanged pleasantries about the train ride from Connecticut, the Manhattan traffic, the unseasonably warm weather. Professional small talk that carefully avoided our complicated history. Finally, my father cleared his throat. We'll get right to it. As Victoria may have mentioned, we're considering selling Hawthorne Architecture. She did mention that possibility, yes. Before making that decision final, we want to explore every option for revitalizing the firm. That's why we're here. Robert opened his portfolio. We've put together some numbers. With the right rebranding and modernization strategy, we believe Hawthorne could regain its position as a leading regional firm. He slid several documents across the table: financial projections, market analyses, competitor comparisons. I reviewed them carefully. The situation was worse than I'd imagined. Revenue had dropped 38% over 3 years. Staff had been reduced from 28 to 15. Their client retention rate was troubling. You've lost significant ground, I observed neutrally. Yes, my father admitted. We were slow to adapt to changing market demands. My mother, who had remained silent until now, spoke up. We're proposing a comprehensive rebranding by Parker Design, full creative control on your part, standard market rates, of course. I couldn't help but notice she said Parker Design, not you, still maintaining professional distance. This would be a substantial project, I said. We're already at capacity with current clients. We understand your firm is in high demand, my father replied. We're prepared to wait until you have availability. I studied them across the table, my father looking hopeful but tired, Robert anxious, my mother maintaining her perfect posture and impassive expression. May I ask why you're pursuing this option rather than proceeding directly with the sale? Financially speaking, it might be simpler to sell now. My parents exchanged glances. My father spoke first. Frankly, the current valuation is disappointing. The Hawthorne name no longer commands the premium it once did. Robert jumped in. We've had 2 potential buyers walk away after due diligence. They don't see sufficient value in our current client base and outdated systems. I nodded, understanding the business challenge. But I sensed there was more. And the personal reasons? I pressed gently. My father sighed. I'm not ready to see 5 generations of work disappear. Not like this, not with a whimper. If we must sell, I want Hawthorne Architecture to be remembered with respect, not as a cautionary tale of failure to evolve. My mother remained silent, eyes fixed on the skyline visible through our windows. I'll need to review these materials more thoroughly and discuss with my team, I said finally. This would be a significant commitment for Parker Design. Of course, my father replied. As they gathered their things to leave, my mother lingered behind. Once my father and brother had stepped out, she turned to me. This isn't easy for me, Alexandra. I know, Mom. If there were any other option, she trailed off, then squared her shoulders. Your father's heart condition is worse than we've let on. The stress of watching the business decline has taken a toll. This isn't just about the Hawthorne legacy anymore. The admission clearly cost her dearly. Victoria Hawthorne didn't do vulnerability. I'll consider the proposal carefully, I promised. She nodded once, then walked to the door. Before leaving, she turned back. You've built something impressive here. Whatever happened between us, professionally speaking, you've earned my respect. After they left, I sat alone in the conference room for a long time, staring at the Hawthorne financials. The irony wasn't lost on me. They now needed the daughter they'd underestimated, the name they'd dismissed. But was I ready to entangle Parker Design with the family business I'd fled? And could I truly be objective about a project so personal? I called my management team together and laid out the situation transparently. This is more than just another client. I need your honest opinions. Can we take this on without compromising our own identity and direction? Zoe, now my creative director, spoke first. It's a prestigious project that could open doors for us, but there are obvious emotional complications for you. I'm concerned about resource allocation, said our project manager. We'd need to delay other work or expand quickly to accommodate this. We debated for hours, weighing professional opportunity against personal complexity. By evening, I had my answer. Would you take on this family project? Comment below with what you would do in my position. After careful consideration and lengthy discussions with my management team, I agreed to take on the Hawthorne Architecture rebranding project with specific conditions. First, Parker Design would maintain complete creative control. Second, we would work directly with a committee of Hawthorne employees, not exclusively through family members. Third, we would charge our standard rates without family discounts. And finally, my team would lead the project I would supervise, but not be the primary contact. My family accepted these terms without argument, which told me just how desperate their situation had become. The discovery phase revealed problems far beyond outdated aesthetics. Hawthorne Architecture was still using software from 2010. Their project management systems were entirely paper-based. Client presentations relied heavily on my father's personal relationships rather than data-driven proposals. Most concerning, they'd made no meaningful efforts to recruit young talent. The average employee age was 52, with no designers under 35. You're not just facing a branding problem, I told my brother during our third week of assessment. You're facing an existential one. Robert nodded grimly. I've been saying this for years, but Mom and Dad were resistant to major changes. They kept insisting clients valued tradition over innovation. And now those clients have moved on to more forward-thinking firms. Exactly. Working with my family in this new professional capacity was strange but oddly healing. My father deferred to my expertise with a respect he'd never shown when I worked under him. Robert eagerly embraced every suggestion for modernization. My mother maintained professional distance, attending meetings but rarely speaking. I caught her watching me sometimes evaluating my leadership style, noting how my team responded to me with obvious respect. 3 months into the project, we presented our comprehensive rebranding strategy. New visual identity, modernized office spaces, updated digital presence, streamlined workflows, and a recruitment plan targeting young architects with sustainable design expertise. This goes beyond what we initially discussed, my father observed, reviewing the proposal. A surface-level rebrand wouldn't address your fundamental challenges, I explained. You need transformation, not just a fresh coat of paint. The investment required is substantial, my mother noted, reviewing the budget figures. Yes, but so is the cost of doing nothing. The conference room fell silent as my parents exchanged glances. We trust your judgment, my father said finally. Proceed as recommended. That evening, he asked me to dinner, just the two of us. We went to a quiet restaurant near my office, the kind of place where conversations couldn't be overheard. Your mother and I are selling the house, he announced after ordering. The estate? But it's been in the family for 4 generations, yes. He smiled sadly. But it's become a burden, too large for just us, too expensive to maintain. We've found a smaller place closer to town. Are things that dire financially? He sipped his water, considering his response. The business downturn affected our personal finances more than we've admitted. We leveraged the house to keep the firm afloat during the worst periods. My stomach tightened. How bad is it, Dad? We'll be fine once the house sells. But we need to close soon or risk foreclosure. Foreclosure? Why didn't you tell me things were this serious? Pride, I suppose. And we didn't want you to take on our project out of pity. I thought about the extensive transformation we'd planned for Hawthorne Architecture. It would take at least 6 months to implement fully, with costs exceeding benefits for the first quarter. How soon do you need to sell the house? The bank has given us until the end of next month to close a sale or make a substantial payment against the principal. That's not enough time for our rebranding to impact the firm's value. No, he agreed. Which is why we've accepted an offer for the business as is. A larger firm from Boston. They'll absorb our client list and keep the Hawthorne name as a subsidiary division. I stared at him, processing this information. You're selling anyway? After we've put all this work into the rebranding? The work isn't wasted. It actually helped secure a better offer than we had previously. But the timeline with the house forced our hand. Why didn't you just tell me you needed money, Dad? I could have helped. He placed his hand over mine. We couldn't ask that of you, Alexandra. Not after everything. I'm still your daughter. Yes, but you're also Alexandra Parker now, with your own business to grow. We made our mistakes. We couldn't ask you to pay for them. I felt a complex mix of emotions: relief that they hadn't asked for financial help, guilt that I hadn't recognized the severity of their situation, and oddly, disappointment that Hawthorne Architecture would soon exist only as a subsidiary of a larger firm. When will you tell the team working on your rebranding? I thought we'd do that together tomorrow. Much of the work will still be implemented, just under new ownership. I nodded, though I knew the project would likely be significantly scaled back once the acquisition was complete. Your mother wanted to be here tonight, he added, but she thought you might speak more freely without her presence. That was considerate of her. She's trying, Alexandra. In her own way. I smiled faintly. I know, Dad. We all are. The next day, we broke the news to both teams. My staff was disappointed but professional. The Hawthorne employees had mixed reactions: relief about job security under the new ownership, but sadness about the end of family control. As everyone filed out of the conference room, Aunt Maggie texted me, "How did it go? Still meeting for dinner?" I'd forgotten she was coming to New York today. Yes, 7 p.m., a lot to tell you. The news of Hawthorne Architecture's impending sale spread quickly through both companies. My team was professional but understandably disappointed that our comprehensive transformation strategy would likely be only partially implemented under the new ownership. I was reviewing contingency plans with Zoe when my assistant interrupted with an urgent message. Victoria Hawthorne was in our reception area, requesting to see me immediately. My mother never made unscheduled appearances anywhere. Something was wrong. I found her pacing our lobby, looking uncharacteristically disheveled, her typically perfect hair slightly mussed, her designer blazer buttoned incorrectly. "Mom? What's happened?" The sale fell through. Her voice was tight with suppressed panic. "They pulled out this morning after their final review." "Why? What changed?" "They claim our infrastructure is more outdated than initially reported. They're offering a new price that's 40% lower than the original." "That's ridiculous. They're just trying to leverage your tight timeline." "Of course they are. But we have no choice, Alexandra. The bank won't extend our deadline. We need $75,000 by the end of the month or we lose the house." The amount hit me like a physical blow. It was almost exactly what I'd requested for my first business loan, the one my mother had sabotaged years ago. "Let me understand. You need $75,000 to avoid foreclosure on the family home?" "Yes." She looked around our office, noting the awards displayed on the walls, the sleek furnishings, the evident success. "I wouldn't ask if there were any other option. What about Robert or other family members?" "Robert invested his savings in the business years ago. He has nothing left. Your father's sister might help, but she's on an extended cruise and unreachable for another 2 weeks." I studied my mother's face, the proud woman who once told me I'd never achieve anything without the Hawthorne name now standing in my office, asking for help. My initial reaction was visceral, immediate. "Sorry, Mom. I only help family." The words hung in the air between us. Her face crumbled, revealing the vulnerability beneath her carefully maintained facade. For a moment, I saw not the imperious Victoria Hawthorne, but a frightened woman facing the loss of everything she valued. I felt a strange mix of vindication and regret. This was the moment I'd imagined for years, my mother needing me after dismissing me for so long. But the reality felt hollow. "I need to think about this," I said, softening my stance. "I'll let you know my decision tomorrow." Her lips pressed into a thin line, but she nodded. "Thank you for considering it." After she left, I closed my office door and called Aunt Maggie. "They need $75,000 or they lose the house," I explained after recounting the situation. "And you're considering giving it to them?" Her tone was neutral, careful. "I could afford it. Parker Design is doing well. We have the cash reserves." "That's not what I asked, sweetheart. I asked if you're considering it." I sighed, conflicted. Part of me wants to help them. Dad's health isn't good. The stress of losing their home could be dangerous for him. And the other part? The other part remembers my mother telling the bank I was financially irresponsible when I tried to get a loan for exactly that amount. The other part remembers being told I'd never succeed without their name, their connections, their approval. Both parts are valid, Alexandra. What would you do? I can't answer that for you. But I can ask, what feels right to you, not as Alexandra Hawthorne or Alexandra Parker, but just as yourself? I thought about it all night. My initial cruel response had been satisfying for a moment, but didn't reflect who I wanted to be. By morning, I knew what I needed to do. I called my mother and asked her to meet me at the Hawthorne Architecture offices. I wanted neutral territory, not my space or theirs. She arrived precisely on time, with my father and brother. Their faces showed the strain of sleepless nights and mounting worry. "Have you made a decision?" my mother asked, her voice carefully controlled. "Yes." I placed my portfolio on the conference table and removed several documents. "I've prepared 2 options." They leaned forward expectantly. Option 1. I provide the $75,000 as a personal loan with minimal interest, secured against the business assets. Relief visibly washed over my father's face. Even my mother's rigid posture relaxed slightly. "What's option 2?" Robert asked. "Parker Design purchases a 25% stake in Hawthorne Architecture for $250,000. The additional funds would provide breathing room beyond the immediate crisis. We'd implement our rebranding strategy as planned, with my firm having significant input on future direction." Silence fell across the table. My mother's expression was unreadable. "You want to buy into the family business?" my father finally asked. "As a business investment, yes, with Parker Design remaining separate and independent." "Why would you do this?" my mother asked quietly. "After everything?" I met her gaze steadily. "Because despite our differences, I don't want to see 5 generations of work disappear. And because I believe with the right modernization, Hawthorne Architecture still has value." My father glanced at my mother, a silent communication passing between them. "We need time to discuss this privately," she said. "Of course. I'll step out." In the hallway, I studied the framed photographs of Hawthorne projects through the decades. My grandfather with the governor at a ribbon cutting, my father accepting an award in the 1990s, family history captured in architectural achievements. 20 minutes later, they called me back in. "We accept option 2, my father announced, "with one condition." "What condition?" my mother spoke. "The firm will be renamed Hawthorne and Parker Architecture." I blinked in surprise. "You want my name on the business? If you're investing as a Parker, you should be recognized as such," she said pragmatically. "Besides, your name carries its own weight now. Coming from the woman who once told me I'd never achieve anything without the Hawthorne name, this was an extraordinary concession." "Then we have a deal," I said, extending my hand professionally. My father ignored my hand and hugged me instead. Robert followed suit. My mother remained seated but nodded once her version of approval. I'd left 3 years ago, determined to prove I could succeed without them. Now I was returning, not as the dutiful daughter seeking approval, but as a successful businesswoman bringing value on my own terms. Have you ever come full circle in a way you never expected? Comment below if life has brought you back to something you thought you'd left behind forever. The partnership between Parker Design and Hawthorne Architecture created buzz in industry circles. "Historic firm embraces next generation," read one headline. "Prodigal daughter returns with conditions," declared another. We moved quickly to implement our rebranding strategy. The tired Hawthorne logo was refreshed with elements that honored its heritage while looking decisively forward. Office spaces were renovated to create more collaborative environments. Digital systems replaced antiquated paper processes. My mother, surprisingly, became one of our strongest advocates for change. Having accepted the necessity of transformation, she embraced it with the same intensity she'd once resisted it. "If we're doing this, we're doing it properly," she declared during a meeting about website redesign. "No half measures." The staff responded positively to the changes, though some longtime employees required extra support adapting to new technologies. My father took a reduced role, focusing on client relationships while gradually stepping back from daily operations. Robert thrived once freed from trying to preserve outdated systems. His strengths in client management complemented my design vision, creating a balanced leadership team. Zoe became our primary liaison with Hawthorne's design staff, patiently teaching them new software and fostering collaboration between the younger and older designers. Her quiet confidence earned respect from even the most resistant veterans. 4 months after our partnership began, Hawthorne and Parker Architecture landed its first major new client in years, a sustainable mixed-use development that would have been beyond our capabilities before the merger. The client specifically mentioned our fresh approach as the deciding factor, Robert reported excitedly. They said we offered the perfect blend of established reputation and innovative thinking. Parker Design continued operating independently, though we shared resources and referred clients when appropriate. Both businesses grew stronger through the connection. My relationship with my parents evolved gradually. My father and I developed a comfortable professional rapport that slowly extended to personal matters. He began asking about my life in New York, showing genuine interest in my world outside the family business. My mother remained more reserved, but the open hostility had disappeared. We worked together effectively, focusing on business matters while carefully navigating around old wounds. Then came the evening that changed everything. I was working late at the Hawthorne offices, finalizing presentations for an important pitch. My mother appeared in the doorway, also working after hours. "You should go home," she said. "It's nearly midnight. Just finishing these renderings. They need to be perfect for tomorrow." She hesitated, then entered and sat across from me. "You always were a perfectionist, even as a child." I looked up, surprised by the personal observation. "I remember your school projects," she continued. "Every detail meticulously planned. You once spent 3 days on a science fair display that could have been completed in hours. I wanted it to be right." No, you wanted it to be exceptional. There's a difference. Something in her tone made me stop working and truly look at her. She seemed different, less armored somehow. I push you harder than your brother, she said abruptly. I always have. Yes, you have. Do you know why? I shook my head, genuinely curious. Because you reminded me of myself. She smoothed an invisible wrinkle from her skirt, a nervous gesture I'd seen countless times. The creative one. The one with big ideas and bigger ambition. You? But you always emphasize tradition over innovation. A sad smile touched her lips. Now, yes. But at your age? I had grand plans to revolutionize architectural design, to break barriers in a male-dominated field. This was a side of my mother I'd never glimpsed. What happened? Life, marriage, children, family expectations. She gazed at the office beyond my door. I gradually became the person everyone needed me to be, the supportive wife, the guardian of tradition. You could have encouraged my creativity instead of stifling it. Perhaps. She met my eyes directly. Or perhaps I was trying to protect you from my mistakes. From wanting too much and ending up disappointed. That wasn't your decision to make. No, it wasn't. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. When you left, changed your name, I was furious. But part of me was also proud. You had the courage to do what I never did. I sat perfectly still, afraid any movement might break this unprecedented moment of vulnerability. I told you that you'd never achieve anything without our name because I couldn't imagine any other path to success. I was wrong. She turned back to face me. You proved me wrong, Alexandra. And in doing so, you may have saved this family's legacy. For the first time in my adult life, I saw my mother not as the formidable Victoria Hawthorne, but as a woman who had made choices and compromises, who had dreams she'd set aside, who had tried in her flawed way to guide her daughter toward what she believed was safety. Thank you for telling me this, I said softly. She nodded once, composure returning like a mask sliding back into place. The presentation will go well tomorrow. Your work is exceptional, as always. With that, she left. Our moment of connection complete, but not forgotten. I sat alone in the quiet office, processing what had just happened. My mother had never apologized directly, that wasn't her way. But in her acknowledgement of my success, in her rare moment of personal revelation, she had offered something perhaps more valuable. Understanding. The wall between us hadn't fallen completely, but a door had appeared small, still partially closed, but definitely there. The next morning, before the presentation, I found a small box on my desk. Inside was a silver business card holder elegantly engraved with AP. No note, but I knew who it was from. Who? The client meeting went exceptionally well. We secured a contract worth $1.2 million, the largest in Hawthorne Architecture's recent history. As the clients left, my mother caught my eye across the room and gave me a slight nod. Coming from her, it was the equivalent of a standing ovation. That evening, I called Aunt Maggie to share the news of our success. I'm not surprised, she said. You've always had the talent. Now they finally see it too. It's strange, I admitted. For years, all I wanted was their recognition. Now that I have it, I realize I don't need it anymore. That's usually how it works, sweetheart. We only get what we want after we've learned to live without it. Do you think Mom will ever fully accept me as I am? Victoria's made more progress in 3 months than she did in the previous 30 years. That's something. I had to agree. The woman who once dismissed my career choice, sabotaged my loan application, and told me I'd never succeed without the Hawthorne name was now letting me lead the family business into a new era. What happens tomorrow? I asked. Tomorrow you keep building both businesses, both legacies. 1 year after forming the partnership between Parker Design and Hawthorne Architecture, we gathered to celebrate our successes. Hawthorne and Parker had increased revenue by 28%, attracted 5 major new clients, and won a prestigious industry award for our sustainable design approach. The celebration was held in our newly renovated Connecticut offices spaces, now filled with natural light, collaborative workstations, and digital displays showcasing our best work. Photos of 5 generations of Hawthornes hung alongside images of recent projects led by our newly diverse team. My father, looking healthier than he had in years, raised a glass. To family, to partnership, and to the courage to evolve. Everyone applauded. My mother stood beside him, elegant as always, but somehow softer around the edges. She'd gradually reduced her role in daily operations, focusing instead on mentoring younger team members, finding unexpected satisfaction in nurturing rather than controlling. Robert had flourished as head of client relations, his natural charm and people skills finally valued rather than compared to our father's technical expertise. Zoe had become an integral part of our combined team, respected by both Parker Design and Hawthorne staff. She'd grown into a leadership role, leading our most innovative projects with confidence and vision. And me? I divided my time between New York and Connecticut, maintaining my independent identity while contributing to the family legacy on my own terms. After the formal celebration, my father found me alone on the terrace. "I have something to tell you," he said, joining me at the railing. "Your mother and I received an offer to buy back our old house. The estate? Are you considering it?" "No," he smiled. "We're happy in our smaller place. Less to maintain, more to enjoy." But it got me thinking about what we almost lost. The house? Everything. The business. Our relationship with you. Our sense of purpose. He looked out at the setting sun. All because we couldn't adapt. "Change is hard," I offered, "especially when you've been successful doing things one way for so long." Your mother was the most resistant. She saw modernization as rejection of everything we'd built. He chuckled softly. Now she's lecturing our senior staff about digital innovation. She's full of surprises. She's always been. That's what made me fall in love with her fierce intelligence, her absolute certainty. But those same qualities made it impossible for her to admit when she was wrong. Until now. Until you forced her hand by succeeding on your own terms. He turned to face me. "You saved this family, Alexandra. Not just the business. The family. We saved it together." Later that evening, as guests began to leave, my mother approached me. "A word, Alexandra?" She led me to her office, now half the size of her previous domain, the other half converted to a collaborative workspace. On her desk sat a silver business card holder identical to the one she'd given me months ago, alongside a framed photo of me at my college graduation. "I've been meaning to ask you," she said, closing the door. "That day in my office, when you came to us about the foreclosure, what made you change your mind?" I tensed, remembering my initial cold response. "Sorry, I only help family." "I thought about what you once told me," I said carefully. "About how I'd never achieve anything without the Hawthorne name. And I realized I had a choice. I could prove you wrong just by succeeding on my own. Or I could prove you wrong by succeeding and then using that success to help the family that never believed in me." She nodded slowly, her fingers tracing the edge of the business card holder on her desk. "The second option was more complete. Yes, and more satisfying in the end. I spent 30 years telling myself I was protecting you by pushing you toward security. By the time I realized I was really protecting myself from facing my own compromises, I'd nearly lost you completely." "Nearly," I echoed. "But not completely." "No, not completely." She straightened a pen on her desk, another nervous gesture. "I want you to know something. I'm proud of you. Not because you saved the family business. Not because you've become successful. But because you had the courage to become yourself, despite everything. Even though becoming myself meant rejecting the Hawthorne name, you didn't reject our family. You rejected the limitations we tried to place on you." She smiled faintly. "And in doing so, you ultimately saved the Hawthorne legacy by transforming it into something that could survive in a changing world." The irony wasn't lost on either of us. By insisting I couldn't succeed without the family name, she had driven me to prove I could, and that success had ultimately benefited the very family that had doubted me. Later that evening, I shared a cab with Aunt Maggie back to her apartment, where I would stay the night before returning to New York. "Victoria actually apologized," I told her, still somewhat in shock. "In her own way. Miracles never cease." Maggie chuckled. "You know, your grandmother would be so proud of you." Elizabeth Parker Hawthorne was a force of nature before she let your grandfather convince her that being a proper Hawthorne wife was enough. I wish I'd known her better. You're more like her than you realize. She'd have loved seeing her maiden name on that building sign. Today, 3 years after leaving the Hawthorne name behind, I'm Alexandra Parker, 34 years old, co-owner of 2 successful design firms. Parker Design continues to thrive in New York with a team of 15 talented creators. Hawthorne and Parker architecture has become known for blending historical sensitivity with forward-thinking sustainability. My mother and I will never have the effortless closeness some daughters enjoy with their mothers. Too much water under the bridge for that. But we have something perhaps more valuable: mutual respect between 2 strong women who no longer need to diminish each other to feel validated. If there's one lesson I've learned through this journey, it's this. Your name, whether given to you or chosen by you, is just a label. Your true identity is built through your choices, your work, your integrity. And sometimes, the people who push you away through their limitations are the ones who need your strength the most in the end. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe. And remember, family is defined not by the name you share, but by the respect you give and receive. Sometimes the family you choose or create is the one that truly sees your worth.